Thank you, Rabbi. In this book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, are the words, Ephes, ki lo yihye v'cha evyon. There should be no destitute among you. I recently started rereading a book by Dr. Abraham Kronbach of blessed memory, who was professor of, and of course I took this course, I don't think students today take a course named this, but a professor of social studies at the Hebrew Union College. Rabbi Dr. Abraham Kronbach was ordained from the Hebrew Union College in 1906 at the top of his class, but he soon quit the congregational world to serve as a prison chaplain before working under Stephen Wise at the Free Synagogue in New York, where he met his partner, and then for various communal organizations that allowed him to do his life's work as an ardent and vocal pacifist and social reformer. During the Second World War, when he was writing this book, The Bible and Our Social Outlook, he wore a yellow star in Cincinnati, which his wife sewed for him in support of the Jews suffering in the concentration camps. I want to pause on that image for a moment. He chose to wear a yellow star. Nothing other than his compassion and empathy compelled him in a free society to wear a yellow star. And I'm sure there were those who told him to take it off, but no one compelled him to wear it. And at the end of the Shoah, his friend, Dr. Leo Beck, traded stars with him. I hear that Leo Beck's yellow star now resides with Kronbach's two grandsons. And the chapel at the Leo Beck High School in Haifa was named by Nifty in his honor. Kronbach is best known in the United States for standing with the two small sons of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg outside of the White House, and eventually doing the funerals of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg as a celebration of patriotism and Jewish identity. The introduction to this book is written by one of the greats in Jewish education, Emmanuel Gamaron. And this short introduction is one that I turn to again and again. In fact, it is one of the reasons I picked up the book in the first place. I'm going to read you just a small excerpt from Gamaron's introduction. There were at all times men and women who interpreted religion narrowly and who attempted to restrict it to what has often been called the relation between man and God. Yet Jewish tradition was so sensitive to the needs of men and women that it placed the relations between man and man on a higher pedestal than even between man and God. He points now to our season. Transgressions committed by man against God are atoned for on the Day of Atonement, but transgressions committed by man against man cannot be forgiven unless the injustice is first righted. This is a powerful idea. Jewish tradition, says the master teacher, Emmanuel Gamaron, places human relationship and social structure as primary over a relationship with an idea of God. Or if I were to say it differently, our relationship to God is constructed based on the plans we are working towards in our building of human society. Our Haftarah this week is an easy proof text. It is not personal redemption promised, but rather a messianic time when shalom, peace, and tzedakah, righteousness, are the governing forces in the life of God's people. The Haftarah continues, Rabbi Splansky mentioned it, and I want to return to this line and spend a bit of time on it because I think there's something in it that we can't quite grasp, really, in the world we're living in today. Isaiah tells of this more perfect time, "Your people shall be righteous, all of them." Not just one political party, not just my political party, not just my wing of politics, not just those that look like me or employed currently, or that went to the right preschool and camp and therefore the right university, but all have the potential to be seen as righteous. Now, I will admit that I am often in the camp of another view, of the slave-owning namesake of my alma mater, James Madison, who in the Federalist Papers, I know Alexander Hamilton wrote a lot of the Federalist Papers, but this is from Madison's Federalist Paper, number 51, wrote, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." James Madison expects the worst in humanity. And that's often the vision that I share. I find myself trapped in the wary and wearying search for the darkness in humankind. And so I find great comfort in this alternative vision, the search instead for the righteous light inside myself and others, just waiting to be amplified. Normally, when we look at others that we don't consciously ascribe to the prosperity gospel, we see something of their worth, which is based on their paycheck. Because you were gifted with the benefits of preferential treatment by society, and therefore paid more, even for the same work, we treat you better in every part of your life. We want you to be our guest, our member, our friend. Reportedly, one of the first questions Canadians ask each other is not, "Where are you from?" or "What are you interested in?" but "What do you do?" I will judge you based on your place in a social hierarchy and relate to you based on your occupation. This Monday is Labor Day. And so, what I'm going to say next may be a bit shocking. I don't think we should tie basic human survival to being paid for labor. If all the people can be righteous, that includes those who are unable to work, because possibly they have vulnerable loved ones and don't feel safe taking TTC to their place of employment. That includes individuals who are not able to get to a job interview because they don't have stable internet connections. That includes people who don't have the basics of clean clothes and stable housing. Today, we have a network of social assistance programs loosely knit together across city, provincial, and federal levels, addressing some of the needs one by one of certain groups, trying not to let any slip through the net. Some would say that the answer is a higher minimum wage. In a conversation about the election to the south of the border on CBC radio recently, one of the reasons given for the strife in the United States was that the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour keeps people in a position of insecurity. $7.25 for untipped labor, and even lower for tipped labor. Though it is raised in some local jurisdictions, that base number shocks me. And this number I can see as one of the roots of the deep polarizing discontent in the United States. One of my colleagues recently posted about trying to get all synagogues to require a trying to get all synagogues to require a $15 minimum wage and 12 weeks of parental leave. Initially, I read his proposal as 12 months of parental leave, but no, he's trying hard to require synagogues in the United States to achieve 12 weeks of parental leave. I nearly posted, but didn't because it would be unhelpful. Move to Canada. Come join us in Ontario. Now, as we reach towards Labor Day, I will say that my unpopular opinion is that I remain, from an economics point of view, deeply unconvinced on the value past a certain point of minimum wage legislation in defeating poverty. In creating the society as commanded by our holy Torah, there should be no destitute among you, especially in the midst of this pandemic, which highlights for us that those who are not working may have better reason not to be working than we once thought. Canada, right now, is struggling with the best way to look after those on the margins, as more and more of us are falling to the edge of the page as this pandemic deepens economic insecurity. Before I bring us towards an idea that centers around human dignity and approaches all with the base expectation of righteousness, I want to introduce one of the central ideas in Kronbach's book. Give the ruler thy judgments, O God, that the ruler may judge thy people with righteousness and thy poor with justice, says the psalmist. Look, says Kronbach, how thy poor and thy people are parallel in the construction of both the prophets and the writings over and over again. How the disadvantaged is interchangeable with us, the audience, the Jewish people. Taking his thoughts one step further, whenever we see the words the poor, what we should be doing is reading we, the poor, and putting ourselves into that part of the story. Then we will have the perspective to build a society cooperatively, treating each of us as valued contributors just because we are human, rather than looking for the worst, the unvalued difference in the other. Back to our present situation. There are proposals on the table to take the ideas behind the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, CERB, and make them permanent. In other words, to create a universal basic income. This is a solution which allows for dignity, for a base expectation of righteousness. It takes away the indignity of begging and being used as a political pawn, of welfare as an ask rather than a right. All of the economic studies I have read paint this as a solid start for those who don't have the spending power to rejoin the workforce. But I am less tied up in the details of those studies than I am in the human idea and godly idea of human dignity, of kavod, which this enables. At the last Interfaith Social Assistance Reform Coalition meeting, ISARC, which Rabbi Satz introduced me to, there was a feeling amongst many of the professionals in the room that now is the time when this policy being brought forth by individuals in many different parties might move forward and should be advocated for by those of many faiths based on a shared understanding around human dignity. I sincerely hope that that is true. If we trust that all our people are righteous, all of them, then it makes it easier to work for a time when there shall be no destitute among us, when shalom, peace, and tzedakah, righteousness, will be the governing forces in the life of God's people, and thus the vision of our prophets, recent and ancient, may be fulfilled. I hope this year is one where, as a first step, our basic necessities are met, our loved ones and those across Canada and the world are able to find prosperity and peace. Shabbat Shalom.